My aunt stood up at the rehearsal dinner, with her wineglass raised and her voice already carrying across the room. And that was the moment everything I had believed for 8 years started to crack. To Gavin and Noelle, she said, with the pause she always uses before saying something she wants people to remember. And to this family's future, I have a small announcement. A gift from all of us. She smiled down at my brother. The property in Belleville, it's yours to use, for as long as you need it. A place to begin. I set my fork down. My mother's house in Belleville had been sold 8 years ago. My aunt told me so herself, sitting across from me at my kitchen table in Hamilton 3 months after the funeral, a binder of paperwork spread open between us. There were debts, she said, a line of credit, medical bills, legal and estate fees that had eaten up what remained. I'm so sorry, Delaney. Your mum would have wanted things handled properly. I was 21 years old and still flinching every time my phone rang, because some part of me expected it to be the hospital again. I had never heard the word probate used in a sentence. I nodded. I signed what she asked. I said thank you. That was 2016. Now it was late August 2024, and my aunt was standing at the head of a long table, inside a lodge in Muskoka, describing my mother's house. The back porch, the wind chimes, the garden she'd planted every May, as something she had the right to give away. 41 relatives sat in that room. My cousin Rosie, who was 7, was 2 chairs away from me, coloring on her paper placemat and humming to herself. I remember thinking the most comfortable person in that lodge was 7 years old. Which property in Belleville? I asked. My voice came out even. I hadn't planned it. My aunt looked at me. The room shifted. The family house. You know the one. You told me it was sold. To settle the estate. There was a half-second of silence. My uncle on my father's side laughed. Not at anything funny, just to fill the air. My aunt's expression didn't change. It was the expression she wears when she has decided how something will go, and is waiting for you to stop resisting. This isn't the time, she said pleasantly. It's Gavin's evening. Let's not do this. From across the table, my brother said my name. Just my name, in the tone that meant, stop. I looked at Rosie. She had set down her crayon. She was watching me with wide, careful eyes. I looked back at my aunt. You're right, I said. Sorry, congratulations, Gavin. I picked up my fork. I took a sip of water, and I sat at that table for the rest of dinner with a specific kind of calm I've only felt a handful of times in my life. Not peace, exactly, but something close to it. The stillness that comes when you stop hoping you're wrong and start understanding exactly what you need to do. Before I tell you what happened the next morning, let me take you back to where this actually started. Because the house was only part of it. My mother's name was Maureen. She died on a Tuesday in January when the temperature in Hamilton had dropped to -23, and the sky was flat and white, the color of paper. She was 54 years old. Breast cancer, 3rd time. She fought it the way she fought everything. Quietly, practically, with the same stubbornness that made her caulk the bathtub herself, instead of calling a plumber, and go back to the grocery store if they charged her 17 cents too much. She had bought the house in Belleville in 1998, before she married my father. It was hers. Purchased with her own savings, in her own name, on a street near the water with a garden she kept immaculate and a back porch where she drank her morning coffee every day. She possibly could, even in October, wrapped in a quilt. She and my father divorced when I was 12. He moved to Guelph. He stayed present in the easy, warm, slightly distracted way of someone who means well without trying especially hard. My aunt stepped in the way certain people do in a crisis, completely, and in a way that made it difficult to question. She was older. She was organized. She had the binder and the appointments and the specific authority of someone who simply acts while everyone else is still numb. After my mother died, my aunt handled everything. Gavin was 25, newly articling at a firm in Toronto. I was 21 and in my 2nd year at Ryerson. We didn't know what we were doing. My aunt told us what to sign and explained what the numbers meant. She told us the house had to go. Gavin received $15,000. His portion of what remained after debts were settled. I received nothing. My aunt explained that my half had been absorbed by outstanding estate fees and the final balance on my mother's line of credit. I thanked her and went home to Hamilton, and spent a very long night staring at the ceiling. For 8 years, I believed her. The first crack appeared in May of this year, on a Thursday evening, when an unknown number called me while I was sitting at my kitchen tables sketching a logo for a client. It was a woman named Dorothea Vance. She had worked with my mother at a law firm in the 90s, before my mother shifted to teaching. She said she'd been trying to figure out the right moment to call. I don't think there is one, she said, so I'm going to do it now. I remembered her from the funeral. Silver hair cut close, a charcoal blazer, the kind of woman who moves through rooms like she's already read the room. She had held my hand briefly in the receiving line, and said something I couldn't quite hear over the noise. Said what she told me that May evening, sitting on the phone in my kitchen while my laptop played something I'd already stopped watching, was this. She was the named executor of my mother's real will, the one drawn up in November 2015, witnessed by 2 people, whose information was on file, the will that had never been disclosed to the probate court. My mother had left the Belleville house to me. She had left the savings account, $48,000, to be split equally between me and Gavin. The account my aunt had told us held nothing by the time the estate was closed. Has the house been sold? I asked. My voice had gone strange, like the volume had been turned down. No, Dorothea said. The title is still registered in your mother's name. It has never been transferred. Your aunt has been renting it privately for at least 6 years. I found the listing under a numbered company registered in her name. I sat there for a long time without saying anything. I should have come to you sooner, Dorothea said quietly. I wanted to make sure I had enough to act on, now I do. She told me what she needed from me was simple. Wait for the right moment, a family gathering, somewhere my aunt couldn't slip away quietly, somewhere there would be witnesses, then call her. I said I understood. I hung up. I sat in my kitchen for 40 minutes staring at the wall. Then I texted my father. Is Gavin's wedding still at that lodge in Muskoka over Labor Day? He wrote back yes. Why? I didn't answer. I drove north on the long weekend, 4 hours up the 400 through Barrie and into cottage country, the highway thinning out and the rock cuts rising on either side. I had Dorothea's number saved and the lodge address already forwarded to her. I told myself I was going for Gavin. Whatever else was true, he was still my brother. The lodge was beautiful. Timber frame, lake view, the kind of Muskoka light at 6 in the evening that turns everything the color of old honey. My aunt was already there when I arrived. She hugged me and said I looked wonderful. I hugged her back and said thank you, in the tone I'd been using for 8 years. That meant absolutely nothing. At the rehearsal dinner, the long table, the candles, the wine. Gavin and Noelle at the head of it, genuinely happy in a way that made me glad I'd come. Noelle's grandmother had driven up from Ottawa and sat near the window, eating slowly, and watching everything with an expression of gentle, absolute composure. I liked her from across the room. My aunt stood up at 7:30. You already know what happened next. Upstairs, in the room they'd assigned me on the 3rd floor, I sat on the edge of the bed and listened to the laughter drifting up from below. The lake was visible through the window, dark now, a thin line of silver where the moon hit it. I texted Dorothea. She announced the house tonight, in front of everyone. 41 relatives, I'm ready when you are. The reply came back in under a minute. Tell me where and when. Saturday morning, 9 o'clock. The main dining room. There's a wedding brunch before the ceremony. I'll be there at 8:50. I set my alarm for 4:45 in the morning. Then I lay down in my clothes and listened to the lake until the lodge went quiet. At 5:05 I got up. I'd packed the night before. I straightened the bed, left the surfaces bare. Before I left, I set something on the nightstand, a recipe card in my mother's handwriting. Oatmeal date squares, the ones she made every Christmas. I'd been carrying it in my bag since February. The way you carry something when you're not sure yet what to do with it. I placed it face down and walked out. The gravel lot was cold and still. I got into my car and drove south without the radio. There was a Tim Hortons in Huntsville, 12 minutes down the highway. I ordered a large coffee and sat in the corner booth and watched the sun come up through the window. I stayed there for 3 hours. I wasn't hiding. I was waiting. At 7:22, Gavin, where are you? Mum's asking. He meant my aunt. I didn't reply. My cousin Marcus told me afterward what happened at the lodge that morning. Piece by piece, over a phone call that lasted an hour. My aunt knocked on my door at 7:30. 2 sharp knocks, the kind that assume compliance. She said my name, no answer. She opened the door, empty, bed made. Nothing on the nightstand but a recipe card, face down. She came downstairs and said in her arrangement voice, Delaney's left. She couldn't handle the situation. You know how she gets. Gavin said nothing. It's better this way, my aunt said. Less drama on your wedding day. Noelle, standing by the window in the early light, said nothing either. But Marcus said she looked at my aunt for a moment in a way that was difficult to read, and then looked back outside. At 8:48, a car pulled into the gravel lot. A woman got out. Silver hair cut short, charcoal blazer, a leather portfolio under one arm. She walked to the front door of the lodge and knocked. Noelle's mother answered. The woman said her name. She said she was the named executor of Maureen Kowalski's estate, and she needed to speak with the family. My aunt, standing in the hallway behind Noelle's mother, went very still. Dorothea set her portfolio on the dining table and did not apologize for the interruption. 41 relatives were still in the lodge, most of them stayed. She presented the original will, drawn up in November 2015. Witnessed and notarized, my mother's signature clear and deliberate at the bottom. She explained that this document had not been disclosed to the probate court. She explained what that meant under Ontario estate law. She presented the title search, the Belleville House. Registered owner, Maureen Ann Kowalski. Last transfer date, never. The property had never changed hands. My aunt said something. Dorothea kept going. She presented documentation of a numbered corporation, registered in my aunt's name, which had been advertising the Belleville property as a private rental, at $1,100 a month for 6 years. She presented records from the estate's legal proceeding, showing the savings account. $48,000 at time of death. Had been liquidated not to pay debts, but transferred to a personal account registered to my aunt. Then she opened a separate folder, and read from a text message chain, obtained through the legal process, dating from 2016. My aunt had written to Gavin, "She's 21 and she trusts me completely, she won't ask questions. Let me handle the estate and she'll never know the difference." The room was completely silent. Gavin's face had gone the color of the tablecloth. "That's out of context," my aunt said. "I have 42 additional messages if you'd like more context," Dorothea said. My aunt looked at my father. My father looked at the table. Noelle's grandmother said something quiet in French near the window. My aunt tried 2 more times. She said Dorothea didn't understand the full picture of the estate's debts. She said she had held this family together for 8 years, while other people had the luxury of living their own lives. She said she had made sacrifices nobody ever acknowledged. Dorothea opened the portfolio one final time. The Belleville property is currently assessed at $380,000. Rental income collected at the documented rate over 6 years totals approximately $79,200. The savings account held $48,000 at time of death. The total value of assets not disclosed to the estate is $437,000 Canadian. She closed the portfolio. I have filed the appropriate notices with the Ontario Superior Court. An independent estate trustee has been appointed. Your role in the administration of Maureen Kowalski's estate is terminated effective as of this morning. My aunt stood up and said she wanted everyone out of the room. Nobody moved. Gavin was quiet for a long time. Then he looked at my aunt and said, with a steadiness that surprised Marcus, "You told me it was handled. You told me she got her share." My aunt started to say his name. "You had her text messages in a legal file," he said. "You wrote that she wouldn't ask questions like that was useful information. Like that was a plan." My aunt left the room. She went upstairs. She did not come back down. Dorothea called me at 9:22. "It's done," she said. "You should come back." I drove back up the highway. The lodge looked the same as I'd left it. Same gravel lot, same dock on the lake, same amber, Muskoka light. I walked in through the front door and Gavin was standing in the entrance. He looked at me for a moment. "I didn't know," he said. "I know you didn't. I should have in 2016, I should have asked more questions. Gavin." He stopped. "You were 25 and you'd just lost Mum. You trusted someone who was supposed to be trustworthy. That's not a character flaw. That's just what happened." He looked like he had more to say, and he probably did. But Noelle appeared at his shoulder in her wedding dress, and she touched his arm gently, and the morning moved forward the way mornings eventually do. My aunt drove herself to a hotel in Bracebridge that afternoon and didn't return for the ceremony. She sent a card later. Gavin told me what it said. I don't think repeating it adds anything to the story. In the months that followed, the Ontario Superior Court oversaw the transfer of my mother's estate. The Belleville house was titled in my name in October. The rental income, through the legal settlement, was partially recovered. My aunt's numbered corporation was dissolved. Her lawyer negotiated rather than going to trial. The amount I received was less than the full total she had taken, but Dorothea told me this was common, and that the alternative would take 3 years and cost nearly as much as it returned. I paid off my student loans entirely. I kept the house. I drove to Belleville on a Thursday in late October, 3 weeks after the transfer. The tenants had vacated. I let myself in with the key the trustee had couriered me, and stood in the front hallway for a while, not doing anything in particular, just standing. The floors were scuffed from other people's furniture. The garden had gone to seed. But the back porch was still there, and the wind chimes were still hanging from the eave, turning slowly in the lake breeze that came off the water 2 blocks away. I don't know if the tenants had put them back up, or if my aunt had never taken them down. I thought about which one was worse and then decided it didn't matter. I found a cardboard box in the upstairs closet, still there, overlooked or ignored. A few books, some photographs, a folded quilt. At the bottom, an envelope with my name written on the front. My mother's handwriting. Small, slanted, pressing harder at the ends of letters the way it did when she was making sure something would last. Inside, a single index card. Delaney, this house is yours. I know you'll know what to do with it. That was all. I sat down on the closet floor and held the card with both hands for a long time. The house was quiet around me. The wind moved the chimes outside. I wasn't crying, exactly. It was something quieter than that. The feeling of something that has been held at a distance for 8 years finally arriving. It's been 7 months now. Gavin and I talk more than we did before, which is something I didn't expect to be able to say. He came to Belleville in November with Noelle and helped me sand the porch railing. We ate pizza on the floor because I hadn't bought furniture yet, and the three of us sat cross-legged in the empty kitchen and talked until midnight. And it was the best evening I'd had in longer than I could account for. My father called the week the estate was finalized. He said he was sorry for not paying more attention in 2016. I said the same thing to him that I said to Gavin. We trusted the wrong person. It was as simple and as terrible as that. He was quiet for a moment, then he said, "Your mother trusted the right one, though. She trusted Dorothea." She did. In November 2015, already sick, already certain of what was coming, she sat in a notary's office and made arrangements for a version of this story she hoped would never have to happen. She gave Dorothea a sealed envelope and said, "Wait until Delaney needs this." And Dorothea carried it for 8 years without anyone knowing. I've spent a lot of time this winter thinking about what that kind of love actually looks like. Not the love that makes speeches at long tables, or announces itself with a raised glass. The kind that thinks 3 moves ahead, that asks, "What will my daughter need in the worst version of what comes next?" and then makes sure it's there. My aunt still sends occasional messages to extended family with her account of what happened. Some people believe her. Most don't, or at least they know enough not to repeat it to me. I renewed my Hamilton apartment lease in the spring. I'm keeping the Belleville house. I haven't decided yet whether to live in it or rent it properly, with a real lease and my own name on every document. Either way, it's mine. Last week I dug up 2 of my mother's dahlias. Perennials she'd planted in the 90s, still coming back every year on their own without anyone tending to them, and potted them for the winter so they'd have somewhere safe to wait. They bloomed yellow. I hadn't known they'd be yellow. I sat with them on the back porch until the light went. The wind chimes moved. The neighbor's cat watched me from the top of the fence. She planted those flowers before I was old enough to remember doing anything. She put them in the ground without knowing exactly when I'd find them. Here they still are, and here I am,